Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Lunar Alchemy. This week, we're having a special session, which is just taking place slightly after the conclusion of our transit through Gate 7, which represents the archetype of the Alpha. Okay, back. It carries us from the shadow of division to the city of virtue and the gift of guidance. So, I have certainly just had a deep experience of this particular energy, having spent since Saturday. I was on a mountain in the wilderness and was able to just finally come off last night. So this experience is very present for me, but I'm very excited to be discussing it as well because it holds a very personal place in my gene key profile, which is as the core wound and the vocation sphere. So, last thing to share is that the element is earth over water, and we'll be talking about how that kind of relates to this energy and this archetype today and what it means for us in embodiment. So, Bella, we've been through the entire transit. What did you feel and what did you notice about experiencing this energetic archetype this year's transit? I can't hear you.
Oops.
Oops.
What about now?
Yes, sounds good.
So I believe we have the same line even. So my purpose is 7.6, and I
Yeah.
think that's your vocation.
Yes.
I feel this year it was accentuated by having the North Node and the South Node in the 1 and the 2. And then, of course, when the Sun is in the 7, the Earth is in the 13. So that cross of the Sphinx that has to do with direction. And we also had extra energy around the second gene key with the North Node and Uranus there. And Mars had just passed over it. So I definitely feel that this is a time for decision, a time for knowing where you're going and feeling a kind of continuity or even a fixedness in that this is where I'm going, and I know that I'm actually done with some of the things that have been in my life before. South Node in Scorpio. And for me, I guess it was to kind of check in and a little bit of a shaking too. Like, what's your direction? What are you going to continue with? Who belongs in your life? And definitely those, just kind of having that mirrored back to me, and also myself. I feel like there was some of my maybe behaviors that were actually coming back to me, and I had to face and I had to understand why those were constructive or destructive. So powerful days. And I feel somehow that the whole Leo season for me has been about self-leadership, self-empowerment, and just checking in. What is it that you want to go on with? What are you in a stable way moving forward with?
Mm. Yeah, so obviously with your purpose sphere highlighted, that's going to be definitely a strong energetic experience. So the the thing that really comes up to me around this particular archetype is its relationship to our human experience of leadership and what that really means. And especially with this archetype of the alpha, we have this sort of cultural understanding of what we refer to as the alpha male and what that means to us from a society that was primarily and built through the frequencies of the shadow experiences that we have throughout each of our systems. So the processes of conflict, of domination, of, all of the various bandwidths of the shadow frequencies were used in order to organize the hierarchies of our society. How is this archetype of the alpha, how is it different from this model that we have? And when we talk about in our human societies, when we identify a particular leader and we say, oh, well, that's the alpha, is within the context of our society, are we actually pointing out an example of this archetype? Or do you feel that there's a different model that is maybe ready to emerge? Ooh, quiet again.
I feel a lot of that collective leadership in the seven, and it is the archetype of the future. And here I actually feel into even a shared leadership. I remember when I was in business school years ago, and we were speaking about shared leadership, for example, between two women, so that they could also have family life. They could have 2 days off in the beginning of the week, and then they could work 3 days. And CEOs of companies where they came together that way, and where there maybe were even childcare in the same building. And this is more than 10 years ago. And I don't know if I've really seen that happening, because I think it's slow, but there is something with that. And also I'm thinking, I'm an only child, and having my dad passing and my mom now with my grandmother passing as well, like I felt it would be so good to have one person that I can share with, and we can decide together, and we can be in leadership together. And really what I feel with the seventh, maybe that's the new alpha. We have a joint leadership, and there's always a sounding board, and we can do it together, and we don't have to exhaust ourselves. So I wonder what the leadership of the future is. And I do feel like it is more balanced in the feminine, the masculine. And when you look at the hexagram, which we can pull up later as well, in the earth element, you have only yin lines. And then in the water element, you have one yang line. So here we have 5 of the lines that are yin, and the second line that is yang. So of course, it's like, that's the sacral. Of course, you need some penetration. You need some lingam, you need something from that sacral center to penetrate the world with in being the alpha and being the leader. And at the same time, like Richard says as well, the best guides, the best leaders are the ones that can listen, that know how to listen. So definitely a more balanced leadership than before is what I see.
Yeah, there's I think there's a popular misconception about how the alpha functions in nature, particularly around the origin of the term, which centers around the structure of the canine world. So when you look at a pack of wolves, when they travel somewhere, from a human perspective, we expect the alpha to be out in front and everyone else to kind of lead it, to follow that lead. But that isn't how they organize it at all. The 3 or 4 of the strongest members of the pack are in the lead, but they're not alphas. They're then followed by some of the eldest and weakest of the pack. And then beyond that is some of the rest of the pack. And in the very back is the alpha male, trailing the entire, essentially, line of this group. And what we can see from this is that when we have this idea of taking the lead, which means to be out in front. And in this organization, the strongest members of the pack are out in front. And so there is an element of collective leadership, but the alpha is actually supporting from the very back, ensuring that every single member in the pack is taken care of, is going the correct direction, is not faltering in the pathway. And when we look at this in a human society perspective, we don't have really the same types of challenges that of survival that a wolf pack, for instance, might have. However, as you mentioned, Bella, in a leadership model with multiple females or women at the front of an organization, sharing the role rather than giving the entire role to one allows for the collective support to begin to flourish. And to me, what that sounds like within the context of the gene key is, this gift of guidance. It's really not about telling people what to do or where to go or how to be. It's really just about being an example or assisting a person on their own individual pathway to embrace their own heart. And once that happens, that wellspring of guidance begins to flow out of them. And then each individual begins kind of their own path of leadership within an organization. And they may be the most prominent person that you see in an organization, or they may be completely invisible. And this, to me, is kind of the main quality of the alpha, is that depending on the mechanism, the design of the human being, they may be a person that nobody has any clue about who they are, or they may be the most visible person based on the way that their design is functioning within the collective. And in order to embrace that, we have to have a way of relating to other people that allows for this sort of organic rising of inner motivation, of inner commitment, of inner dedication, and to me that begins to bring up this codon ring of union. And I'd love to hear you, Bella, just kind of talk about these 4 gene keys in relationship to the alpha archetype, to look at these, because we're actually, during this Leo season, we're going to cover, I believe, 3 of these. Is that right? There's only one.
It's all of them, right?
It's all of them.
Yes.
Yes.
For the 29 and the 59. Yeah. So we are going through them as we're moving
we're going
into
to take them all. We're going to go through all of them during this Leo season. So yeah, I'd love to hear your context, because this is the first one that we're stepping into in this union. And it feels like this kind of portal for a transformation of human relating.
Yeah, I almost feel here again that it's that we're a family, we're the same company, we are sharing the weight in a way. And I don't know if I've thought about the codon ring of union that way before, but I feel that the 7 who starts that make me feel something that has to do with belonging, which is what we spoke about on the call on Monday with everyone in the inner circle. And for me, union somehow, it is about belonging. It's about feeling one and creating that organism. And then, of course, you can braid, and it's fun to braid the gift frequencies of these 4 gene keys and the acidic frequencies. And you see how they go together. You see how the guidance goes together with the understanding, goes together with the intimacy, goes together with the commitment. Like all these are super important for human relations, and to be in a family, whether the family is a blood family or a family of a community that decides to be together. And maybe when we think about the tribe from a human design perspective, and we look at the 49-4, for example, there's a lot of those like principles that are tribal, and how we need to rub each other the right way so everybody can have what they need to have in the tribe. And I feel when we look at the code ring of union, it feels like a higher frequency relating almost, where definitely we are coming into a way that's not just based on what the tribe needs to survive, but actually the quality of human relationships.
Mm. Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought up that aspect of it, because I feel like one of the things that many of us are working with, and what is brought up not just in this general community of people who are working through human design, the gene keys, and with you and Ashley, but in many different forms of self-development. Many people are talking about, well, let's be high vibration. Let's raise our frequency. And looking at what that actually means as an individual. How do you relate to others at a higher frequency than where you are? How do we step into a way of being that allows us to participate in this sort of higher frequency form of family? And what does that really mean? And I really believe that this archetype has a very, very beautiful perspective about how we can integrate this possibility into our bodies and into our thoughts and how we process our emotions as we're moving forward on this path of individuation, or however we see our evolutionary path. And in order to really slice down to where that begins, we can look at the shadow of the alpha, which produces division. And one of the really interesting ways that I think about, that's really interesting to me, is that we can actually engage in forms of guidance that carry the frequency of division by nature. And it's this divisive quality is cloaked in this intention of guidance that we have from within ourselves. Oh, I want to help this other person. Oh, I want to show them how they can do it better. And oftentimes when we engage from this particular perspective of having a good intention to help others, to be supportive to others, and we kind of bring that offering out into the world, what we do is we end up failing to listen to the actual experience of another person, because we're so focused on where they could be and not where they are. And when we do that, it is so very, very difficult to see ourselves from an accurate perspective that allows us to recognize the shadow as it is moving through us. And interestingly, in my experience, because of course this is my core wound, so I've had this experience over and over and over again in my life. When we offer that virtuous intention of, oh, I want to be of service to this person. And we offer guidance rather than offering our listening and our space. We don't actually often receive the feedback that allows us to see the impact that we're having on that person and their experience of division. We can see them perhaps acquiesce or submit to the guidance that we've offered, particularly if we carry the 7 within our own profile, because when we speak, people listen. That's one of the qualities of this archetype of the alpha. And it's just, it really kind of blows me away how sneaky this shadow can be. And also how almost destructive it can be to our ability to truly create the family structure through which this particular archetype and energy can flourish and truly serve the collective. So, Belle, I'm wondering if you see a connection to kind of what we've been discussing here through the elements of this particular structure, and how does, I mean, we're in Leo season, and what if we got earth and water in this trigram? You know, some people experience Leos as the most blazing fires they've ever come across, you know, kind of depending on their makeup. How does all of this relate to the elements that we're working with here?
So first, commenting on what you were saying, what I felt is that a lot of it is mechanics. And I have the 7 in a 6 line like you have. So first and foremost, the 731 channel that goes from the G center to the throat is a collective channel. So it's all about the future and improving for the future. So of course, it's going to see potential. It's what it's here to do. And then the 6 line is all about the future, and it's here to see the potential, the beauty, the vision of the future. So when you have 7.6, actually mechanically, you're here to see the future and the potential of that future, the vision of that future. So to say to a 7.6, don't see the potential, just listen. You know, there is something in there too, where I feel there is also an acceptance of what is it that this gate, this line care about, and to not try, because it wouldn't be beautiful if all the gene keys and all the line cared about the same thing. So somehow, again, I want to bring that in, because sometimes in the gene keys, I feel like we kind of say, oh, this is the highest thing to do, this is the best thing to do, or just return to the heart. And that is actually what I would say about this gene key, because having it in the G center, and I think it's important to know where the gene keys are in the body graph as well. This is the higher heart, the true self, that the inherent feeling into what the correct aligned direction is. And it's also where love resides. So when we have the 7th, it's the kind of leader that goes back to the heart. And I guess that's the fuel for the leadership. And it's what you were saying, like, how can we tap into those leaders that are going to lead in a way that is in a higher frequency? Yeah, it is back to the heart. It is back to the true self. And that true self inherently care about the future of the collective. So important to know that it's here to guide. Definitely listening is part of guiding, but it's actually, it's encoded to do that. And I think that when I'm thinking about that codon ring of union, you know, we need to have, like, I feel we need to have that force forward, and the trust of that force forward. And I feel, yeah, there are definitely something interesting. Let's look at the elements. There's something interesting here, like you're saying, it's a Leo gate, and it has a lot of feminine qualities in it as well. So trust and follow the current of love inside to lead others with the heart. Well, yeah, there we come back to the heart. And I guess, I mean, it's kind of funny that that's the discipline. You know, there is a discipline to always come back to the heart and lead others from there. And somehow, and this is possibly like, I might, this is mechanics too. I might speak like this because I'm a Sphinx. So like you would kind of erase in a way my whole purpose of being here if you would say, just listen. And I have the 13, which is the other side of it. So of course, listening again, it's the programming partners, the polarity point is part of it. But there is definitely the discipline to trust the heart and to be the one, Leo again, dares to go forward and to say, I've got this. I can feel the future in my cells. If you have a 6 line, you can feel the future in your cells, and you trust that and you orient with that. So here we have what you can see in the braid is the 29th. So water over water, water goddess, 29th gene key, which is half-heartedness, commitment, and devotion in the frequency band. And here you see earth over earth, the 2nd gene key, dislocation, orientation, and unity. So we have the 7 that's made of earth over earth, 2nd gene key, and water over water, 29th gene key, which speaks a lot to what the 7th gene key is. So division is dislocated half-heartedness. So it's not only half-heartedness, it's like lost half-heartedness. So speaking about losing energy on something that that's not important. And then guidance is orienting commitment. So I guess that all the time, it's not leadership, it speaks to that. Leadership is not fixed. And this is also why I feel like the sounding board is important. Like we're orienting. And if we can orient together with 2 hearts, maybe that is more of a commitment. Maybe there is more of a line direction there than when we just have one person doing it. So orienting all the time and having that commitment. And then virtue is unity with devotion. So devoting ourselves to that, whether we call it family unit, whether we call it the group that we belong to. And here very much that unity is the collective unity, it's humanity. So because it doesn't actually see the tribe or the individual as clearly as it sees the whole.
Yeah, beautiful. I think it's so important to be able to look at all of the different sides of these archetypal energies, because the way that our personalities function within a linear context, you know, we can get it's so easy to get stuck on one element or another of how we experience the energies moving through us. And one of the things about water is that it's the most flexible thing of all. It's the most flexible element that we can kind of directly touch and bring into our bodies. It flows around any obstacle and adjusts itself. And within different weather contexts, it shows up as a different form. You know, we don't often see that on our planet where, you know, we don't have things like, I mean, obviously we can sort of artificially manufacture liquid nitrogen by freezing it to a temperature that we can't really find on the planet here, you know, but we don't often see an element of air changing forms throughout our natural weathers. And so here with water, the heart knows when to step forth, when to take action, when to be bold. And it also knows when to be soft and when to receive and when to listen. And so I think that what we're both been sharing today is that there are multiple facets to this form of leadership. And if we focus too tightly on one particular way of stepping into our heart space or something, we're not actually paying attention to what's happening there. We're just kind of overlaying another idea about how we've been conditioned to understand leadership to function. You know, oh, a true leader in the new way is somebody who listens all the time. Or, oh, a true leader is someone who blazes the trail ahead. Or, you know, oh, a true leader is somebody who's like a drill sergeant and just like keeps the whole army in line, which is kind of interesting because that's the name of this hexagram in the I Ching, is the army. And so you know, it's like when we get to this type of an archetype, we begin to see just the complexity of human relationships and how different each of us is, and the capacity that our hearts have to meet the moment that is required in order to move forward in harmony with that higher frequency that we may be desiring to experience. So I really appreciate that this discussion is sharing some of these different angles and provides, you know, maybe just a peek at how this could look through each individual different mechanism as a human being can exist from that human design standpoint. It's going to look very different for each of us, you know, depending on how we're built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it also makes me think about the element water, because we might feel like, oh, water is yielding, is soft, is so feminine. And then when we think about the I Ching and the abyss, when we have the water over water, that's going down to the abyss, and to say, yes, whatever is down there, it's very scorpionic because it's the deep waters. And there is something definitely with leadership that is to go down there and say, I'm saying yes, you know, until there is no men left in the army, I'm there. Until so definitely not only thinking about water as something soft and yielding, and the same with earth. Like, what is she actually able, what has she been able to absorb and take from us, and still showing up every single day? Isn't that fierce? Like, there's a fierceness both in earth and in water that's there. And I feel that's something we want to also bring in, and why I feel that, like you say, the dynamism that we have in this key, it's not just listening or just leading, it's all these facets, and how to look at each part with different eyes and on both sides of the coin.
Yeah, and it kind of brings a little bit of understanding as to, well, how does water and earth relate to this fiery sign of Leo? And when we look at this kind of dynamic aspect, it, you know, when we look at nature, obviously we can see this in over long periods of time in the movements of the earth. We can experience it directly in the different forms that water takes, and how dynamic it is, and how much power and strength it can have in different contexts. And fire kind of exhibits all of these qualities as well. It can be raging out of control, and it can also be this like very soft, you know, but extraordinarily potent slow burn that can, you know, you can use it for any number of purposes. If, you know, we're having campfires and you can cook food on embers, you know, it's throughout humanity's history, that was one of the traditional ways of cooking, was dig a deep pit, put a bunch of rocks down there, set a huge fire in the pit, and then, you know, toss your food in there wrapped up in some leaves and bury it. and all of that powerful, potent heat will cook enough food for the entire tribe, you know. And so lots of connections between these various elements.
And maybe just the last thing about harmonic gate, like really when we have that voice that comes up out in the 31 to really understand that we wanted to be grounded in the true self. We wanted to be grounded in the heart. We wanted to recognize all these facets of leadership. And that's when it can come out in true leadership and not in arrogance, for example. So definitely always, wherever we're in the body graph, it's so important to look at the whole process of those two harmonic gates coming together, because that's the theme, that's the process. And sometimes for me, that gets lost in the gene keys. So here we have a connection between that truth of the self that gets expressed. That's the whole process of this channel of facilitation or of leadership.
Yeah, somehow it almost makes me wonder about when we begin to think about this idea of leadership in terms of synarchy, and the synergy that is a part of that process. Are we moving into a place where, as we begin to form these groups that are functioning at higher and higher frequencies, are we moving towards this almost like a meta human being, where the collective designs of all of the people within a group or within a family are creating like a fully defined human, amongst the totality? Because one of the things that I don't have the 31, it's not defined for me. And one of the things that I've been doing this year, my profile is a 6-2. And one of the things that I've realized this year about my own path is that I hadn't fully accepted the functionality of my design line, that second line. And because of how it impacts other people, or how it has impacted other people in the past. And as I go about this process, I can remember now as like a teenager being thrust into positions of leadership naturally, because I carry that 7 line. But then when I would take action to express that leadership to other people, it was never really received. But I don't have the 31. So really the only pathway for me to be able to express that leadership is through that second line, through my design, my design aspects. And it really brings up this kind of interesting way of being able to learn how our individual mechanics work in relationship to these different keys, and whether or not we have them activated or they're not activated. For me to understand that when there's a person around who has that gate of the 31, I really get to become really kind of get to disappear in a group, because I don't have to speak. I can just be myself. And if there's kind of some leadership that occurs through that, wonderful. If there's not, doesn't really matter for me, because I'm kind of embracing my own role. And I'm curious if you have a particular perspective about those ideas.
Yeah, for me, definitely, if you're in a group, I would say they're going to be electromagnetics, and so the other people are going to have the 31, so they can create that channel with you. And then together with that person and their design, that's the kind of leadership that's going to come out in that setting. Or we have the transits that are where you get defined with the 31 or the whole channel. So definitely somebody has the 7 are going to have so many chances of expressing leadership, maybe even more sometimes than somebody who has the 31-7, because there's so multiple ways for you to actually do it. do the process. And it's almost like you have an arm. That's 7, which is your vocation also. So there's a lot of fuel, a lot of energy there. It's reaching all the time for the other side. So somehow I can feel like that leadership is even more dynamic. I have the 731 in my attraction and my purpose in a 6th line, both of them. So in a way, there's a very narrow leadership happening there with the defined throat also in the defined G through that channel. Like it's going to be very, not rigid, but very narrow and precise where it comes out. And whatever context you put me in, I'm going to first and foremost live my process out of that. Like there can be other 7s and 31s, but because it's defined inside of me, my voice, my leadership, my vision is not really going to change. So I can somehow feel like it's more interesting to have a hanging 7.6 in your vocation. It's always going to, it's Mars of your body. It's the action of your body. It's always going to ask for what's on the other side. So definitely I wouldn't say, oh, you only have half. So if somebody has whole, like that would mean that I would speak all these hours like that you and I are together, and you would kind of feel overpowered by me. And I know we have had many comments where people are like, oh, John speaks so long every time. And like it's almost the opposite when it comes to you. And so definitely I would, on the other hand, if you feel irritated by somebody that has the whole channel, I would be like, wow, interesting, a trigger. Somebody has that defined. So I can't win because you only have half. So that's an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for like facing some of the difficulties, energetical, mechanical difficulties in life. So I see it more as a positive thing, I guess, or as an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really just insightful about how we can see how our hanging gates, our defined channels can function in a group, and kind of having a little bit more to see about how this might play into not only our personal relationships, but also our relationships within the group. Oftentimes I feel that we can see in personal relationships where there are hanging gates that come together, and people kind of have this experience of like, whoa, a blast of energy and through this channel. It really looks like, it just looks like a different way of considering how some of these mechanics function through us. And in this context of the alpha, it's a beautiful way to look at it, because groups dynamics can be so very varied, and it expresses so many different possibilities that we can have in relationship. So very, 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 very interesting contemplations to say. And looks like we had some disconnections happen. I've been with Bella the whole time, so maybe
I think we're good. I think we're good.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining this unusually scheduled Lunar Alchemy today. Normally we are on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern with this discussion. So we appreciate each of you coming to join us. Your energy is very appreciated in how it truly contributes to this discussion and the different pathways we take along the way. I'm certainly happy to be back from up on the mountain. I had an interesting experience around this alpha with being at the peak of a 14,000 foot mountain and being caught in a thunder hailstorm, trying to get down. So I was really grateful to have this particular key functioning through me, because it gave me just enough strength to get back and be able to share with everybody our time today. So anyways, we are going to continue with our transmission. So for our members, we'll join into the other room. And please feel free to join us every Monday with our discussion. And we would love to have you as part of our membership as well. We offer quantum energetic transmissions that function through the elements of the 4 elements of our bodies. And this offers another dimension of integrating the energies of these archetypes, regardless of our particular designs, helping us along the process of deconditioning and moving into a deeper and deeper authentic expression of ourselves. So we'll look forward to seeing you in a future discussion. And I hope you all have a beautiful day. We will be back on Monday with the transit through Gene Key 4. Sending you loving presents from my heart to yours, and bye-bye for now.